Comedians are terrified to make jokes. Used to be you'd flip on David Letterman, Johnny Carson, Jay Leno, and whatever your political leanings might be, president got made fun of, famous political leaders got made fun of in the monologue, and it was almost impossible to know what the overall political leanings of the comedian might be because they tried to be equal opportunity attackers. Now, comedy is basically dead in late night television, although we should mention, even though it doesn't get a lot of attention, Greg Gutfeld, you've been going on his show for a long time, Buck. Greg Gutfeld dunks all over Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel, over who's the other guy, Jimmy Fallon. Like, they absolutely destroy now, Greg Gutfeld does, Fox News, late night,
and can
those
I just say,
other programs.
They inherited massive platforms and audiences that were built in. Yeah, Fox is obviously a very large platform for news. There's not an inherited audience of a couple million people every night at 11 p.m. to watch comedy, which Greg, to his absolute credit, has built. And to Fox's credit, has allowed that kind of a show, which honestly there should be more shows like that, right? There should be more shows that try to be culturally relevant as well as news relevant from a, not even just a conservative, just a right of center or centrist perspective would be nice.
Or just a logical perspective. But it is interesting that show with Greg Gutfeld has begun to dominate. And here's my thesis, and I'm curious, before we play this clip from Jimmy Kimmel last night, I'm curious what you think in general about this thesis, Buck. I believe that what happened in late night television is Stephen Colbert went all in on attacking Donald Trump like crazy, and his show on CBS went from last place to first place because there were people who wanted to tune in to a Trump is awful, comedic-focused broadcast. Colbert had a lot of success, and then Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon chased Colbert to the point where, honestly, the smart play probably would have been to go in the opposite direction of Colbert. But because Hollywood is so left-wing and left-leaning, you can't get guests that are promoting their movies or are going to come on your television broadcast, period, if you go too far centrist or right-wing. And so they all chased each other down the left-wing rabbit hole and basically assured each other of mutual destruction.
So I remember the originator, in a sense, of this model, the guy who first got it right big time, and I'm sure you used to see his show a lot, and I certainly did back when I was in college, was Jon Stewart with The Daily Show. And that was going back to the Bush administration. And what that was a place where, because liberals, I mean, you see this, they love the Maddow show during Russia collusion, even though it was all lie, it wasn't true. That's what they wanted to see. They prefer even more just the snarky, snide attack of someone pretending to be a comedian that's really doing political commentary with jokes because, one, they just want to see pies thrown at the people they disagree with, you know, those red state, anti-vax, Trump-voting, MAGA hat people. But also beyond that, they don't want to be encumbered by facts, logic, reason, or decency. They just want to see their enemies mocked and humiliated. The left is obsessed with this. They also can tolerate no humiliation of their idols, their ideas. I mean, the fact that we haven't seen more comedy, Clay, about people walking around with gas masks or 3 masks on, or people that think it's
or
normal
hazmat suits.
To wear or hazmat suits, or it's normal to wear a mask driving alone in their car. I mean, this is ripe for comedy. I mean, these are things that
Biden himself is wildly ripe for ridicule.
And yet it doesn't happen because we all know that the one thing the left cannot abide is the ridicule of its rituals and its ideas, because then the whole thing starts to fall apart. It's cultural resonance that makes it all so powerful. It's the cool kids watch Colbert and laugh at his stupid anti-Trump jokes, and so everybody else does it at the same time. But I think that really what you're seeing is actually just a form of propaganda, because they're doing political commentary on those shows, Colbert and Kimmel and whatever, but it's political commentary for stupid people. Because they don't actually, well, the moment they get challenged, it's, oh, I'm just a comedian, I'm just making jokes. Well, no, actually, you're making political arguments with jokes placed around it so that you're immune and you can just take snide, cheap shots at the other side.
Are you with me growing up? If you watched Leno, I was a Letterman guy. I don't remember having any sense for what their political beliefs were.
I never thought that Letterman was funny 1 second of one day in my entire life. I didn't watch him that much. I did watch Leno sometimes, who I did think was funny. So this is amazing. This is another one of these areas where I see here, I go, Clay, for a guy I agree with on so many things, Letterman was a mean guy. I don't think he was a funny guy.
I loved Letterman. I would watch Letterman every night. I like the way he deconstructed late night television. We could probably have a huge debate about this. But the bigger picture here is, would you agree with me as a Leno guy that you really didn't get the sense that you knew what Jay Leno or David Letterman thought politically?
Yes, he made jokes. He made jokes that were meant for the entire studio audience and everyone watching at home. You could have been a Bush voter and in the Leno years laugh at jokes about Bush, and it wasn't uncomfortable because it came from a place of comedy, not a place of derision. And what's happened now is the left, because of cancel culture, one, has weaponized the culture against the mockery of things that they hold sacred, but also don't really have no interest in just the art of making people laugh so much as they want to be propagandists for their political side. And they want to humiliate their targets. They're not trying to make everybody laugh.
And it's interesting in that respect. Let's play this clip when we come back, because it is. I think a lot of you out there listening to us now have sort of a visceral reaction when I say Letterman or Leno, whether you like them or not, or certainly if you go back to Johnny Carson, they were equal opportunity comedians throwing punches and jabs in every direction, such that you really never had a sense for exactly what they believe themselves, almost in a Walter Cronkite sense, for lack of a better way.
He was
like
also
back
a
in
lib,
the day.
but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, but back in the day, you didn't really know. I mean, look, I think the assumption has to be that if you live in Hollywood or you live in New York and you're entertainment, you're probably a left-leaning person, unless you are totally silent, in which case I think that you might not be. But I do think that the question of how did this pivot occur, and is there a way out of it? And honestly, in the process, are comedians cutting their own throats? Because if you only allow humor in one direction, ultimately it's going to be a failed humor.
I mean, satire is usually directed at those who are in power.
That's right.
And that's what it's supposed to do. And this is why political cartoons, for example, throughout our history have been so powerful, because they expose truths that also have a cultural salience, right? They show things in a way, they visualize what we know to be true, and is often something you're not supposed to say, or those in power don't want you to feel comfortable saying. What's happened now is, particularly when you're talking about the gatekeepers of our culture, they determine what jokes are allowed and are not allowed, and they certainly don't want them being directed at the people who are in power. And that just goes to, right now, Clay, what is there to make fun of if you're Stephen Colbert, if you're these other, I haven't seen their shows in a long time. I see clips of them occasionally. What is there to make? You can't make fun of the Biden administration. You're not going to make fun of the fact that there's a senile buffoon who is actually president of the United States, because that's your team. So all the actual comedy that people might be making is always encumbered by the subservience to political belief. And that's why comedy's basically dead. That plus everything that's actually funny now, you can't say out loud in a public forum without possibly losing your job, being kicked out of your housing. That's where we are.
It's also why I think you're seeing Bill Maher cut through the noise to a certain extent now with his HBO show.
Welcome back to the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show. This is Buck. We're going to have updates for all of you on the situation in Afghanistan. Some Democrats are saying all U.S. citizens are out. Chuck Schumer said that. That's interesting because it's not true, but they're already furiously rewriting the history of this. They're talking about a Biden doctrine, and we're learning more about the Taliban. Looks like the old Taliban in a lot of ways, including some of the leadership. We'll get into this coming up at the top of the next hour. Clay had mentioned that there was there's a dearth of humor from people that have these supposed comedian positions on TV. They're really political commentators who occasionally make jokes. And Jimmy Kimmel, who, he's gone after people on the right in ways that I thought were just, I'm not even talking about to make jokes about, but in a more personal way, seems kind of nasty. Here he is talking about, this is his version of comedy. Play it.
Dr. Fauci said that if hospitals get any more overcrowded, they're going to have to make some very tough choices about who gets an ICU bed. That choice doesn't seem so tough to me. Vaccinated person having a heart attack? Yes, come right on in. We'll take care of you. Unvaccinated guy who gobbled horse goo? Rest in peace, Wheezy. We've still got a lot of pandimwits out there. People are still taking this ivermectin. You know, the poison control centers have seen as this spike in calls from people taking this livestock medicine to fight the coronavirus, but they won't take the vaccine.
Apparently, he's paid millions and millions of dollars by, what is it, Disney, to be a moron and a liar, because that's what that sound clip says to me. First of all, anyone who says it's a horse drug is an idiot who's being dishonest. It's not even possible to be that stupid. But Clay, I mean, this is what we're up against.
Yeah, look, I think the whole and we need to play later in the show the Joe Rogan clip, because you took ivermectin. It was prescribed to you when you had COVID.
Yes, by a highly regarded infectious disease specialist of 40 years almost of practice in New York City. Yes.
And it's not the same doctor, but Joe Rogan, I'm sure, also had ivermectin prescribed to him by a doctor. It has been prescribed to humans for decades. As a drug, right? It has
saved probably millions of lives over a course of many years.
Yeah, so this is, that clip to me is emblematic of, in many ways, the failure of comedy, because it's not a joke that would have been made, I don't believe, by David Letterman or Jay Leno. And look, I know Jimmy because I do a show with his cousin Sal. Jimmy and I mean, he's a good dude. I like him on an individual basis. And he's good friends with Adam Carolla, Buck, who has almost identical opinions to you and me in many different respects, except Carolla is a lot funnier. And if you watch The Man Show back in the day, which I bet you watched some clips of back in the day because you're around the same age
Can neither
as me.
Confirm nor deny.
Yeah. The Man Show, which was Adam Carolla and Jimmy Kimmel, and which my buddy Sal wrote on, is fabulously funny. And I think the distance between late night television today and what the Man Show could do represents a failure fundamentally of comedy. And to your point earlier, if you are, and I think it's a big question and I don't know the answer, you know, Gutfeld is having a lot of success by effectively being the anti-Colbert, right? He's coming at things from a right-wing perspective, where Colbert comes at it from a left-wing perspective. Is there still a space in comedy for a guy who is basically right down the middle, or a girl, going after equal side humor? I don't know that there is, Buck. I wonder on some level whether we have so, and I'm making up a word here potentially, nichified comedy that the only way you can win in society, and I wonder about this and worry about this a little bit, is if you are trying to appeal to a targeted demo instead of trying to appeal to the masses.
Well, this is also what happens when you have gatekeepers, those who control platforms, corporations, openly going woke, and now what you have is, you could call it the balkanization of the media.
Yes.
It certainly happened in news and commentary. When I got into this 10 years ago, Clay, MSNBC would say, Buck, we want to have you debate jihadism or something with so-and-so. And we'd actually get to fight it out on TV. CNN would have people say, how could you ever work at CNN? Because they let me go on and crush comedies, and it was fun. You could actually do that. Now they would cheat, and they would talk over you, and they, there was a lot of, it was a hostile environment. But at least it used to happen. Now no one really does this anymore. It doesn't exist, and everyone just wants, they want what they expect from a host to be said night in and night out. And I mean, Clay, I understand that, the Jimmy Kimmel, maybe he's a nice guy person to person, but the stuff that he's saying, given what we're going through as a country and the real threats we face, I mean, it's reckless, man. It's bad. It's not cool at all to pretend that people are, that people shouldn't go. He says that. He makes that as a joke. Other people are going to say, yeah, you know what? You're right. Unvaccinated people shouldn't get into the ICU. I mean, that's a real issue right now.
What's crazy is at least he's a comedian saying that. There are real doctors saying that. That I basically, hey, I'm not going to treat you if you are not vaccinated. And to me, again, all of this begs the question: has the left wing in many ways killed comedy? Well, have they destroyed all? I think there's a. I think
the mockery. I think we got to be honest. I think the mockery comes in advance of the policy a lot of the time. it's those stupid Trumpers won't do this, or those Trumpers won't do that, and they make jokes about it, and then all of a sudden it's Pelosi and Schumer on the floor of Congress who are advocating, or the Biden administration just saying this needs to happen. And enough people have bought into the lies that the mockery are built on that they go, yeah, you know what, I guess we do have to do it. It's not funny anymore, Clay, right? That's what they'd say. It's reality now. We have to make them do this.
And I think this is also a function of Twitter, right? Because Twitter is so far left-wing, yet it is, for media people, catnip, right? Even if you're a middle-of-the-road or right-wing person, you still understand that is where stories come and where debates take place.
Well, I mean, what percent of the country is really on Twitter? Isn't it like 3 or something? I mean, it's
2% of people are actually active tweeting on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, 1 in 50.
It's people that live in our world that are really. We'll come back to this because Clay, we have so many calls. People obviously people are fired up because this does matter to the culture and to our politics. As Breitbart said, politics downstream of culture.